Before you hear this, you need to understand, the last time humans got truly angry, we didn't start a war, we removed an empire from existence. The terrifying part. The weapon we used, it's still running. The training hall aboard Vanguard's Reach was bathed in a cool, silvery glow, the kind that made the metal walls seem almost alive. Beyond the massive viewport, the swirling eternal storms of Tarion V churned in slow, hypnotic spirals. The young recruits sat in orderly rows, their new uniforms still stiff, their faces expectant. They had no idea what kind of man stood before them nor what kind of stories he carried in the lines of his weathered face. Captain Elias Kane rested both hands on the head of his cane. His posture deceptively casual, his eyes, sharp as ship-grade steel, moved slowly from one face to another, as if measuring the weight of each soul in the room. He let the silence stretch until it became almost uncomfortable, then spoke, his voice low but carrying easily in the quiet. "There are places in this galaxy that aren't empty," he said. "They used to exist, but now no one remembers their names." The words hung in the air like static before a storm. A few recruits glanced at each other, unsure whether this was part of the day's lesson or something else entirely. From the second row, a hand went up. It was Lyra, sharp-eyed, restless, a little too curious for her own good. "Sir," she asked, "what do you mean by no one remembers? Is it like they were erased from history?" Kane's gaze flicked to her. His lips curled into something that might have been a smile or maybe just a shadow of one. "Not erased by time," he said. "Time forgets slowly. This is different." The recruits leaned forward almost unconsciously. The hum of the station's system seemed louder now, filling the spaces between Kane's measured words. Lyra pressed on. "Then what erased them?" He let the question hang. His eyes drifted toward the holomap at the front of the room. The projected stars glimmered, suspended in the air like frozen sparks. Yet here and there were blank patches, no stars, no light, no data, just white voids. Kane took a slow step toward the projection, the tap of his cane against the floor echoing like a clock counting down. "Those voids you see aren't natural. They're not accidents. They're scars. And the reason you've never heard their names is because someone made damn sure you couldn't." A faint ripple of unease passed through the room. One of the younger recruits swallowed audibly. Lyra's eyes narrowed, her voice quieter now. "So someone deleted them." Kane stopped in front of the largest white patch on the map. For a moment, he didn't answer. His reflection hung in the void, the silver lines of his hair catching the light. "Memories can be stolen," he said finally. "Entire civilizations can be torn out of the fabric of reality. Most people don't even notice the absence. They go on with their lives, never knowing what's missing. And maybe that's for the best." He turned back to face them, the faint hum of the holomap casting a pale light across his features. "But some of us remember," he said. "Some of us were made to remember." Lyra's voice came soft but steady. Why would you keep a memory like that?" Kane studied her for a long moment. The kind of look that felt like it could reach right through your skin and pull out your secrets. Then he sighed, a slow, heavy sound, like the settling of ancient machinery. "Because only those who've lived through it," he said, "understand why we're not allowed to speak of it." The room was utterly still. Outside, the storm on Tarion V shifted, a darker band curling into the clouds like a warning. Kane's eyes lingered on the recruits for a moment longer. Then he turned away, and as his cane tapped against the floor, the edges of his voice seemed to carry something colder, something older, something that felt like the beginning of a memory no one should have to carry. They called themselves the gatekeepers of evolution, and to them, we were nothing more than a failed experiment. The memory came flooding back the moment Kane's eyes fixed on the largest void in the holomap. His voice, low and deliberate, carried into the minds of the recruits like a current pulling them under. The Aegis had been a sleek research vessel, its white hull gleaming against the black as it drifted through a narrow corridor of stars. Wasn't a warship. It wasn't even armed, just a transport for scientists, engineers, and the children they'd taken under their care as part of the migration program. 800 souls in all. To the crew, the voyage was meant to be quiet and uneventful. Corridors inside were full of warm light and laughter, Children chased each other past observation windows, pressing their palms to the glass to watch distant nebulae paint their hands in color. In the mess hall, an old engineer named Reeves sat with a group of kids, teaching them how to fold paper gliders from star charts no one needed anymore. The hum of the engines was steady, familiar, a sound that felt like safety, until it changed. The first ripple hit like a shiver through the hull, subtle, but enough to draw the captain's eyes to the navigation display and scheduled mass displacement. Dead ahead, before the crew could react, the stars outside warped, ending around something vast. Shapes emerged from the darkness, colossal vessels of living light, their surfaces shifting and flowing like molten silver. The Surath had arrived. They didn't hail. They didn't warn. They encircled the Aegis in perfect formation, the way a predator might surround prey just to study the fear in its eyes. The captain's voice over the ship-wide channel was tight but calm. All hands, brace, lock down the children's quarters. But the Surath weren't here to negotiate. A beam of white fire lanced across the void, striking the aft section. Bulkheads groaned, ruptured. Emergency lighting strobed red as the atmosphere bled into space. The mess hall became chaos, tables flipping, trays scattering, yet over the din came the high, bright sound of a child's laughter. No one knew why that recorder was still running, but later, when the wreckage was found, the salvage teams would listen to the audio, the laughter, the sudden spike of alarms, burst of static, and then nothing. Absolute silence. Kane's voice in the present dropped lower. That's all we got from them. No distress call, no bargaining, just that one recording. In the memory, the final moments of the Aegis played out like a cruel inevitability. One by one, escape pods launched only to be caught in tendrils of Surath light and crushed into glowing dust. On the bridge, the captain's last act was to lock the navigational core, preventing the enemy from tracing their colonies. His hands didn't even leave the console before the forward viewport filled with blinding light. Back in the present, Kane's eyes were on the recruits. Though it felt as if he was still watching that light consume the ship, the last transmission we received from the Aegis, he said, was 6 words. The holomap flickered, and a crackling voice played in the stillness that they are still watching us. The silence that followed was heavier than steel. The galaxy thought we were hiding. That was the point. In the days following the Aegis, the busy arteries of human space fell eerily still. Cargo haulers that once moved in constant convoys vanished from the trade lanes. Passenger liners diverted to distant, unlisted routes. Spaceports that had never known a quiet day now stood in shadows, their docking arms reaching for ships that would never arrive. The other species noticed. They always notice weakness. Rumors spread across the neutral networks, half whispered in backroom taverns, murmured over encrypted comms. Some said Earth was in shock, frozen in grief. Others claimed the humans were dismantling their fleets, ready to sue for peace before they lost more. In the assembly chambers of the Galactic Union, ambassadors traded knowing looks and spoke of humanity as a people who had finally learned their place. They were wrong. On the 8th night, Captain Kane stood alone in an empty observation bay aboard Vanguard's Reach, the storms of Terion V boiling endlessly below. The comm panel at his side chimed once. A blue holo shimmered to life in front of him, resolving into the sharp, angular features of Dr. Mira Voss. Prepare the reality map, she said. No preamble, no pleasantries. Kane's jaw tightened. It's been a long time since anyone said those words. Mira's gaze was steady, her voice clinical. It's been a long time since we needed to. She raised her hand, and a smaller projection blinked into existence between the man-encrypted data file, its seal marked by a strange, symmetrical glyph. Kane had never seen it before, yet something about it set his teeth on edge. The shape seemed to hum, even in silence. Geometry that didn't quite belong to the laws of this universe. What is that? He asked. Mira hesitated just long enough to let the tension settle. The signature of the Atraxi Dominion, she said. A civilization erased before our species learned to leave its own moon. Kane stared at the symbol, the implication settling cold in his gut. And you think the same will work on the Surath? I don't think, Mira said flatly. I know. Across human space, the movements had already begun. Station cargo bays sealed for maintenance were being stripped bare. Outdated freighters were fitted with unfamiliar modules. Convoys moved under blackout protocols. No transponders, no registry. And all of it was funneling into places the Galactic Union didn't even have on record. Back in the observation bay, Mira's hollow feet flickered as Terrion's storms lit the glass behind Kane in violent white flashes. Her eyes never wavered. Kane, she said, her voice dropping into something colder, older. Activate the silence protocol. The projection vanished. Kane turned to the viewport, staring past the glass, past the storms, to somewhere far beyond. And there, in his mind's eye, the map of Surath space began to take shape, stars waiting to be snuffed out. The Surath commander's voice ripped through the comm channels, raw with panic. It was a sound no one in the galaxy had ever heard from a Surath before. Fear. In the war room aboard Vanguard's reach, the holomap of Surath space floated in midair, a galaxy of pinprick lights representing star systems. Each one shimmered in pristine white, like beads of glass suspended in darkness. Then, without warning, the first star blinked out. No fade, no explosion, just gone, as though someone had plucked it from reality. A murmur swept through the human officers watching. Kane stood with his arms folded, his eyes fixed on the map. Beside him, Dr. Mira Voss adjusted a set of controls, her movements precise, almost surgical. On the other side of the war room, a comm feed displayed the bridge of the Surath flagship. The commander, a towering figure of liquid light and shifting geometry, was shouting orders in a language that seemed to fracture the air. Pull the fleets back to prime. Seal the gates. Evacuate. The rest dissolved into static as another cluster of stars winked out. And with them, the fleet stationed there. The holomap pulsed once. A wave of black radiated outward from the vanished systems, touching others, swallowing them. It moved too fast for ships to outrun, too absolute for defenses to matter. Sector 9 is gone, an officer reported, her voice barely above a whisper. No debris, no signals, on the Surath feed. The commander's form flickered violently, then steadied. This is not possible, he snarled. We are. His words cut off mid-syllable. The feed went dark. His ship, his entire system had simply ceased to be. One of the younger human lieutenants stepped closer to Kane, his voice tight. Sir, if the protocol keeps running, could it erase us too? Kane didn't look at him, didn't answer. His gaze never left the spreading void on the map. Mira's hands hovered over the console. Wave 3 complete. Initiating final pass. The last of the Surath core systems flared, a brief and natural white, then vanished. Silence fell in the war room. Not the silence of comm channels going dead, but something deeper, an absence that pressed against the ears and lungs. The holomap now showed nothing where the Surath territory had been. No stars, no coordinates, just a cold, sterile whiteness, as if the galaxy had been scrubbed clean. Kane exhaled slowly. The void stared back. Memory isn't something we keep, Mira said quietly, her voice carrying in the dim chamber. It's something we attach. The air inside the secure archive on Earth was cool and still. The kind of silence that felt engineered. The walls were layered with holo archives, rows upon rows of transparent panels, each holding fragments of history that officially didn't exist. The light here was low and amber, casting long shadows across the floor. Kane stood just inside the threshold, his boots making no sound on the polished surface. He'd been in this room only twice before in his entire life, and each time, he'd walked away feeling heavier than when he'd entered. Why me? Kane asked, his gaze fixed on a dormant archive panel in front of him. Why keep some of us with the memories? You could have wiped us like everyone else. Mira was at a nearby console, her hands moving over the controls with practiced ease. Because erasing everything is dangerous. Without witnesses, the protocol becomes too easy to use again. You and I, we're not survivors, Kane. We're warning signs. Her tone was calm, but there was an edge beneath it, something that hinted she'd argued this point before and maybe lost. Kane stepped closer to her. You think that stops them from pressing the button a second time? Mira's fingers paused over the console. I think it makes them hesitate. With a flick of her hand, the archive panel in front of Kane flickered to life. Not Surath space, not the void they had left behind, but something older. The image showed a lush green world under a pale gold sun. Towers of white stone rose From its continents, cities teeming with life, until the recording skipped. One frame they were there, the next, they were gone. The sun still burned, but the world below was nothing but smooth, glassy oceans, as if it had been wiped clean by an invisible hand. Kane's breath caught. This wasn't Sroth. No, Mira said. This was the Talri ascendancy. They vanished long before we ever reached the stars. The protocol didn't start with us, Kane. We just inherited it. She let the words hang between them. Kane turned toward the center of the room, where a large holomap of the galaxy rotated slowly. Most of it shone with familiar constellations and tagged systems. But there were whole regions of flat white, where nothing existed. As his eyes swept over them, he noticed it, a single point of light, faint but pulsing, right at the edge of a newly formed void. He stepped forward and laid a hand against the projection, the cold hum of the holofield buzzing under his fingertips. Outside, beyond the archive's sealed walls, Earth turned slowly on its axis, oblivious. The training hall came back into focus with the low hum of the station's life support systems, as if the long silence of Kane's story had stretched across centuries and snapped back in an instant. Outside the wide viewport, the rolling storms of Terrion turned slowly, a colossal spiral of ochre and silver, the great eye of it churning like a patient predator. Kane stood at the front of the room, leaning lightly on his cane. His eyes weren't on the recruits anymore. They were fixed on that storm, as if he could see through it past it to somewhere very far away. The room was still. The recruits sat as they had at the beginning, but now their postures were tight, their expressions unsettled. It was Lyra who finally broke the silence. If someone made us angry again, she said, her voice steady but laced with something sharp, would we use it? The protocol. Kane didn't answer right away. He let his gaze linger on the storm, the glass between them reflecting the faint light from the holomap behind him. His reflection was split half in the calm of the room, half swallowed by the swirling chaos beyond. Behind him, the holomap of the galaxy rotated in slow, graceful arcs. At first glance it was as it had always been, stars glowing like fireflies in a black sea. But near the lower edge, in a place no one was looking, a patch of white had begun to spread. It crept outward in tiny increments, eating the darkness pixel by pixel, patient and methodical. Kane finally turned, his gaze sweeping over the young faces in front of him. "You're asking the wrong question," he said, his tone low. Lyra frowned. "What's the right one?" He stepped toward her, the faint tap of his cane echoing in the hushed space. "The right question," he said, "is whether anyone will notice when it happens." For a moment, no one moved. The only sound was the soft hiss of the air recyclers. Then Kane's eyes slid to the holomap. His expression didn't change, but his voice dropped to a whisper meant for no one in particular. "Maybe," he said. The protocol never really slept. The lights in the hall dimmed without warning. Outside, the storm on Terrion seemed to deepen, its great eye turning toward the station like a watchful sentinel. The white patch on the holomap continued to expand, pixel by pixel, and hurried. Inevitable. Then the screen went black. A single line of text bled onto the darkness in cold, white letters, access, pending.